in class.
Yeah, you have a little break?
Yeah, this is my break's end now. This is class started.
Good. Well, I'm a little bit away. I'm a ways from you, about 5 feet from the computer, but I can see you all pretty clearly. I probably look pretty small, so I could get like that. You know, if I get too close, I'm too pretty. I was still waiting for a couple more people to show up. We might be lacking a couple tonight because of work. We'll see. So, any questions? Let me just say from the beginning that we're still trying to figure what is the best way to make this work. I have an assistant actually working with me who's also taking the class named Matt Dunbar. I don't know if Matt, if you wanted to see Matt, he could walk around here and he'd show his face. Come on, Matt, let them see who you are so that they don't think there's a ghost back there. This is Matt. So Matt's back there, and he's a lot more technically inclined than I would be. And I asked him to help as well, because if you have questions, you can text them. I guess you said through chat that, if I'm talking and saying something, if you're muted, then what you can do is just send a question into him and he'll ask me and we can go from there. It's just, it's a little bit of a dance. We have to figure out what's comfortable for everybody. As you well know, you're doing other Zoom meetings, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. So we have, we're missing still a couple people. Janet, there comes Janet. Janet's on the road driving from Iowa to Washington, and she said she was going to pull over someplace. Last time I saw her, she was in a big tractor. Janet, I see your name. I don't see your face yet.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I started to say, I'm waiting to see it. Janet, is that you, or is that, I can't tell what that.
It's me. I'm trying to figure out how to turn my camera around.
Yeah, you
Sorry.
You look like a box or something. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, it's facing backwards.
It's all right.
User error.
Are you on the way home?
No, I'm home.
Oh, you already made it back?
Yeah.
Wow, so you're back in the state.
We drove fast yesterday.
Yes, that's a pretty long drive from Iowa to Washington.
Yeah, I think we made it in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
It was a 700-mile drive yesterday.
Yeah. And I've done too many of those. I do them a lot. Well, I think we're waiting for Andy to show up too. You probably would, so we're just going to tarry for a minute. We're a little bit early anyway. So while we're waiting, does anybody have a question about anything that I can answer? Yet. Good. As I was starting to say is that we're still trying to get the rhythm of this, but Matt has we're recording it on YouTube as well. We'll send you a link to it once we're done. So if you want to go back and look at it, you're able to look at it. And actually, several people are probably going to do it that way. Hello.
I did it.
You're here. Wearing pink. Can everybody see everybody on your screen right now?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So on the upper left-hand, I don't know if the names are coming up on the upper left-hand. Well, it's probably not upper left-hand for you, but for me, I have Jill on the top left, and I'm on the right, and then right below Jill is Lauren, and then Mark is to the right of Lauren, and then Josie's on the left, and then Janet's on the bottom right, at least on my screen. So it's pretty good. So if we have another gentleman here, then we'll be even here. I'm hoping that we have a good discussion. I want us to think a lot about light. I'm going to go ahead and just sort of begin, and if Andy hopefully will get in here soon. But I think I just saw his name pop up. Is that right? Nope. We might have to send him another. Maybe we can send him another note even. Yeah. he's in Chattanooga. I wonder if he thinks he's on Chattanooga time. Could be. Still too far away. All right, so I was starting to say, when I was teaching at Western, the first couple of years I was teaching there, one of the classes that I was asked to teach was kind of a basic studio lighting class. It was what we called, it was sort of basic 2 or photo 2. And after somebody already had a basic, hey, Andy, there he is.
Guys,
Good to see you.
good to see you all too. Sorry about that. Had a little connectivity issues.
Now you're there, man, you're there. So we have all kinds of people already. Now we have sports photographers, we have movie makers, we have people who do every kind of photography. I won't go into all your names here. I would say just, and I want to keep this relatively quick so we don't take all the time here, but I would like you just to, since everybody can see you, just to introduce yourself in a minute or two, just tell people who you are, and so that you're going to be a family. I mean, if you imagine this as kind of a virtual ship that we're going to travel out in the ocean here together, and Lauren knows that because she's in the Coast Guard, but we're going to travel out in the ocean together, and this is, so we might as well get to know each other. So when food is missing, you can blame somebody else in this group, right? So I'm going to start on the upper left with Lauren. Just tell everybody who you are quickly.
I think I'm off mute now.
Lauren, I'm sitting here. I'm looking right at. I looked right. Yeah, right. Okay. I'm going to start with you, Lauren. You're on the bar.
Okay. I'm Lauren. I'm a public affairs specialist in the Coast Guard, so I get to do some photojournalism kind of stuff once in a while when I'm lucky. I met Dave when he was a guest speaker in my intermediate photojournalism course. And I live in Cleveland, Ohio with my 2 dogs.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll go to our far left and we'll ask Jen if she'll introduce herself.
Hi, my name's Jen Veloso, and I heard about this class from my friend Jake May. He's a photojournalist here working for MLive in Flint, Michigan. I live in Flint. I was an ER nurse for the last several years and have been transitioning into photojournalism, and I just got hired for my first freelance gig for a local newspaper.
Cool. Cool. All right, Mark, you're on my far left, so would you go next?
Sure, happy to. My name is Mark Goldman. I've been a photojournalist for 20 plus years, primarily specializing in sports. So I cover all the professional teams in Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, as well as college.
He's modest. He can do a lot of things, believe me. We had a good discussion. He's quite a talented guy. All right, Josie. Josie, wants to use this American name, even though she has another name, so she gets to have 2 names. So I'll honor that, Josie, and I'll call you Josie.
Hi guys. So yeah, my full name is Liu Chen, but that's translated from Mandarin. So I go by Josie. Josie's good. So I'm a student at Penn State, and I'm actually graduating in December. And I heard about this class through a alumni called Andy Cowell. He works based off in Colorado. And yeah, we're here to learn.
Cool. All right, Janet.
Hi, I'm Janet Denman. I live in Vancouver, Washington. I am an unemployed event planner due to COVID. Our association stopped having in-person events, so they didn't need an in-person event planner anymore. So I'm really just taking this time to focus on photography. I'm more of a hobby photographer right now and kind of branching into maybe going more professional, thinking about writing some picture books kind of things, and just traveling with my mom and hanging out and doing fun stuff right now. Excited for this class workshop.
I've known Janet at least 6 years, maybe longer. We've been to several seminars together, which is it's always a lot of fun. All right, Andy, you're on my bottom here. Andy's a new friend because he's a friend of mine, and another talented guy who who makes movies too. All right, Andy, tell us about it.
Hey everyone, I'm Andy Sarjahani, and I'm a documentary filmmaker and photographer based currently in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm in the process of moving to New Orleans over the next month. And I am moving in with one of Dave's former students, which is how I found out about this class. So
Good. So you didn't get a chance to meet Matt. I don't know if Matt can. Yeah, Matt can. They can hear you, can't you?
I don't know. I think so.
How come we don't got your face? Oh yeah, you can't because you're operating. All right. So Matt Dunbar is a. I'll let him tell you who he is.
I'm a minister actually. I know Dave from church, and my degree is in media production, so I dabble here and there with video and photography and audio. So just helping them out from the IT stuff and learning a little bit by myself. So
Yeah. So when when you guys are going to be so smart that we're going to change all your last names to Alec when we get done, right? Because you'll all be smart Alex, just like us. All right, Andy, that's supposed to be funny. I didn't even see you smile. There you go. All right. So as I said, we're gonna get ourselves started. I want to begin this a little bit. It'd be easier if we were sitting here in person, but we weren't. So I want you to imagine with me for a minute. I want you to think about light, because I think what happens with light as being it's certainly a foundation for photography. And I put together a PowerPoint. We'll go over that in a second here. But when you think about light, without light, we don't even exist. Light means everything. And I was starting to say is when I was teaching a class at Western Kentucky many years ago, and it was really supposed to be kind of a location lighting class and studio class, that I began with asking the students to take the next weekend, and I wanted them to look at as many different light sources as they could find. And I'd ask them to look actually at a couple of movies. I wanted them to look at the movies. I said, I want you to notice how they're using that light. Are they using natural light? Are they, what is the light source? You watch where are the shadows falling and stuff. So we often say, and Josie reminded me just the other day when we were talking, and she said, if you don't have shadows, you don't have any light. Well, yeah, that's exactly right. Wherever there's shadow, there's going to be some kind of a light. So I really want us to, it sounds almost too elementary. That's what's difficult, because sometimes the most simple things are really the most complex. And light is really actually quite complex. And our ability to see light is actually kind of complex. We just take it for granted. It's like we take for granted, drinking water or even breathing. But if you don't take it for granted and you stop and you start really appreciating it and looking at it, you're going to have a whole different outlook on everything that you do. And so it has to begin with that. I really think that what I'm hoping to do with you is some of the stuff's very basic, and it'll be up to you to make it to go beyond the basics with it. So what you'll do is that let's just say that I'm not giving this as an assignment, by the way. Let's just say that, okay, your assignment this week is to photograph a carrot. I'm not going to do that again. It will be up to you to be creative and say, well, gee, what do I do with a carrot? Do I stick it in the horse's nose? What am I going to do with a carrot anyway? I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So that's really, it's an exercise for you as you go along. And you're going to notice right off the bat that some people who have a little more experience are going to embrace this more quickly. And they're going to they might even do things that are a little bit complicated or exotic. Whereas others might do something that is really basic. And that's wonderful, because that's how we're going to learn, as we are going to share these pictures with each other. Which takes me to a point, I guess I put up one of the fundamental questions that people ask are going to say, well, how are we going to get your pictures to you? How are you going to send them to me? And what I want to start off doing is just having you email them to me. So what I would like you to do, I'm going to give you an assignment this week, or Tuesday, and I'm going to probably repeat that assignment Thursday, because the way I want this to work is I want to be able to have a conversation on Tuesday about a particular thing, but I want us to be able to use Tuesday to really look at the work. So like next Tuesday, we're going to spend most of the time looking at your work and talking about it. So this week, I'll give you an assignment, we'll talk. Thursday, I'm going to go over that some more, and you'll officially get that assignment. That's officially how that cycle will begin. And then you'll turn that in, you know, could be Thursday, could be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, as long as I have them before Tuesday. So back to that, what I would like you to do is I would like you to do some editing, because in our business, you have to do some editing. So I'd like you to you know, see if you can choose maybe 5 pictures, and if it's 6, that's fine. 5 or 6 pictures from each assignment, and then be able to, if you're able, and again, I don't know what your ability is. I think everybody's able to do this. Everybody probably has Photoshop or some equivalent, where you can send these, you can, you know, downsize them, make them like 10 inches wide by 200 DPI, which is a pretty good size. You know, we don't have to make them 72 DPI, you know, unless you want to. If you want to make them, if you're nervous about putting things online, you want to have them online, then 72 DPI is pretty much the standard. But I'd rather have them be a little larger, because I like to use them and share them, and we can, so I would say 10 inches wide, you know, pick them back to 200 DPI. Okay, those are all technical things. Does everybody there not understand what I just said? Does everybody understand what we're talking about? We're talking about DPI, dots per inch. If you're talking, I'm sorry? Andy, you're with me? Yes, of course. Mark, I know you are.
Yeah.
Matt, Janet, does that make sense to you? You're with me? Most of you using Photoshop?
Yes.
Jan, you using Photoshop? Yeah, so let's just say you take 5 or 6 of your favorite images from that, and they can be different. You know, you might take 5 different approaches on this assignment, and I hope that you will stretch yourself to do that. So what you do, you know, send me those 5 or 6 images, just email them to me, just send them as an attachment. You know, and if you want to send larger way, there's other programs you can send, you know, larger files to. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to take them. The reason I like to use the email is because I'm always on my email. I'm always accessing my email, whether it's on my phone or whether it's on my computer, and I can quickly look at something when you send it in. I can look at it any time, or I can quickly download it and put it into a file. It's just, I found it works easier for me than to create another file someplace else and dump everything into it. It's just one more step that I don't.
So Dave, can I ask a quick question on that? On photo, when you use Photoshop,
Yes.
you got a range of, when you save an image, from 1 to 12 as far as quality goes, and that drastically affects the size. So you want to save like a 10 or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I always save mine larger, but that's up to you. I mean, the 10's fine. That's a good size. I'm not going to sell your images. I'm not going to be giving them to anybody else. It's just between us. Mm-hmm. This is what we call it's a safe group. This is a group of people that we're all friends, and we're here to help each other. I might show, like today, I'm going to show you a couple of images from other photographers. And when I do that, I will tell you who they are, because I don't like people just pulling images and then just using them without giving people credit for that. So if I do share something if I don't tell you, then they're likely images that I had shot for a reason. So we'll go through that. So once again, the procedure is going to be, Thursday, I'm going to give you this assignment again, the same one I'm talking about today. We're going to give you that assignment. I'm going to talk about another aspect of light, and then you will have, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to either shoot them or work on it, and then make sure that I have them before Tuesday, because I want to have time to look at your images and spend time with them. Because I've told most of you this individually, but what I do is I'm really committing myself to 6 weeks, just as though you were sitting in a class. And what I will do is, this is going to be very personal to me, as it is to you. And the more work I see of yours, the more able I am going to be to help. I can sort of maybe coach you on some things that I see. So, and if you have other things that you want to share, if you have a website that you want to share that you would like me to look at, please send me a link to that. I'll be glad to look at that. I would like to look at it, actually. I'd like to know what you've been doing. Matt's been helping me. We're trying to get a website up here soon. We hope soon. And so I've had like 5 websites and my stuff's all over the place. And it's time that I get a little more organized. I have to get there's some people that will never work out unless they have like a physical workout coach. But I'm that way with organization on some stuff. Unless I get somebody who's going to really sit me down and organize me, I'm going to have stuff all over the place. It's just it's the way that I think, and it's the way that I work. So I see that Jen is smiling. So, yeah, it's all right. It's a sign of a creative brain, right? Yeah. Well, the rest of you aren't like this. Okay, so let me ask you another basic question here. Does everybody have a tripod? Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah. We're in an era where people don't know what tripods are unless they're on the bottom of a thing where old people use to keep from falling, I think that when I started out, tripods were more important because people they want to stabilize the camera and sometimes you want to use that to be able to, as a tool to do self-portrait. So I think having a tripod or access to one is kind of important to you at some point, particularly when you're talking about using low light. I know you can handhold stuff. I can handhold stuff really easy, and there's a lot of techniques now. But I still think that's a pretty basic thing that you want to do. And when it comes to metering, we'll probably have conversations as we go through this. But I'm going to tell you, generally speaking, and this is a general, that generally when I meter, I'm usually metering for highlight. What does that mean? It means that I'm not putting my camera on matrix. I don't want the camera to look at an overall scene and then try to average it, because particularly when we're talking about recognizing light and using highlight and stuff, that's a dangerous thing because you're just going to blow your highlights totally out. So generally speaking, it's not like you have to do this, but generally speaking, you're going to find that if you're making your exposures for highlight, that's pretty average. What I just remember years ago, a lot of geographic guys, and this is a long time ago, but they would carry around a meter, different than the meter in their camera. So I know I'm telling you guys basic stuff, but I have to go with this. The camera, the meter that's in your camera is called a reflective light meter. And what it does is it reads the light that bounces off of whatever subject you're trying to photograph. It's reading that light. I got to turn this thing off. Brother, no, not really. So you have a reflected light meter, and they're really accurate. I mean, they're actually very accurate. But there's another light meter, which a lot of people will tell you, and maybe movie guys use this more, is that you're going to use an incident light meter, which actually reads the actual light. It's not the reflected light, it's not the light that's bouncing off of the subject, it's the actual light itself. And so, you'll see people walking around with one around their neck. They used to be. They'll have an incident light meter, and they'll take it out and they'll read the light. And what a lot of the geographic guys used to do, you go out, 8 o'clock in the morning, you do an incident light reading, you put the light meter away, and you don't even think about it. All you're going to do is you're reading highlight. You're going to be making your exposures for that. Unless the light changes abruptly, that's what you're going to do. So you're going to find that when you start dealing with light, you're going to have a choice. I'm looking right now at Janet, and I see that there's a rim light around the top of her head, which means there's a light source. It could be from an incandescent bulb. I'm not sure where that light source is coming off the top of her head. So that highlight is going to be very different, right? Can you see her? Mm-hmm. So if I decided that I just wanted to make a picture of her, and I did a matrix metering, it might try to adjust for that highlight. Her face might be too deep in shadow. You have to make a choice. What do I want to do? Is the shadow going to be important? I'll let the highlight become a specular highlight. I don't want any. I don't need any tone in it. I don't need any data in there. So the choices you have to make, and I think that's what's going to be really important. The very first assignment that we're going to do is it's going to have something to do with that. So I want to go back for a minute to for you thinking about what, actually, let me go to that PowerPoint here if I can, because I can just start. And this will keep me on track so I don't drift off too far away. I would say most of our sessions, folks, are going to start, you know, they're going to really run about 90 minutes. You know, if you have to leave early, that's fine. They might end up at 60 minutes. You know, I think when we're done, we're done. It depends on what we're trying to do. So, you know, I'm using that point that Josie said, and that is wherever there's shadow, there's going to be light. Now that, you know, that really has to do, I mean, that's a literal statement and it's a figurative statement. It's also a metaphor. I mean, there is that, when we think about it, you know, we often use that term like, you know, this was you know, and biblically he would say that he's the light of the world, right? And so when we're talking about photography right now, we recognize that there's hope and there's light with that. Can we go to the next one here? So I think, as I started to say, it's like breathing to me. When I get up in the morning, and I often think about a man that I met he was a monk up in I don't think where it was. It was up in Vermont. This monk in Vermont, and I stayed there for about a week working with these different monks, and at this monastery. And there was, you know, I would try to get up before they got up. I'm always up before daylight. But one morning I went in there. It was probably 5 o'clock in the morning, and I went into the room where they often gather, and I noticed a silhouetted figure sitting in front of the window. And then I just sit back and watched, and I made a few frames of him quietly, and he sat there. Every morning he does this. He goes there about 5 o'clock in the morning, and he sits at that window, and he just watches the light slowly awaken. And it's really a part of his ritual. And I thought, boy, isn't that what we need to do as photographers? That really, I kind of thought I wouldn't like going to a monastery for a week and working on the story of monks. I was almost transformed by it. It was so moving because these people were so deliberate. They went, you know, everything was very slow, and they felt it. And it reminded me, when we're talking about photography, I think what people do is that they go out and they grab their camera and they just start shooting, and it's just like eating without tasting. You just like stuff it down your face and I'm moving on. But what you want to do is you want to think about your breath. You know, that's what yoga is about, right? It's that you're supposed to clear your mind. You're supposed to do this deep breathing. You can do the same thing as a photographer. And I suggest that you get in a habit of doing it, honestly. I think you're going to find that, particularly when you're doing stuff outdoors, when you're doing landscapes or anything that's going to require, you know, an acute, you know, sensitivity toward light, give yourself a couple of minutes to slow down and appreciate the environment that you're in, the light that you're going to see. So I know I'm talking, I keep looking at the computer, so I'm talking down. I'm sorry you're looking at the top of my head here, but I might just move this down a little bit. Can I do it? Just a touch. All right, I'm just going to do it gently, so I'm now looking at the top of their head here. There we go. Whoa, it's a little better here. That way, if I have to move somewhere, yeah, that's a little bit. Now, hey, we're almost even now. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So what I want you to do is, I want you to think about closing your eyes and actually feeling the light. There's a picture following that. I'm going to show you this next picture because I think it's a good example of this. Just go ahead. This is a picture that I shot in Italy, and it had been cold, it had been gray, it was rainy, and finally the sun kind of broke, and I watched this couple step out, and I thought, boy, that's exactly right. It's a matter of them closing their eyes and feeling that light and feeling the warmth of that light and really absorbing it and appreciating it. How do we photograph? How we can photograph anything and really appreciate that light if we don't stop and look at the beauty of it and how magical it is? Now, again, I'm probably going to, I feel like I'm beating this into the ground, but it's critical. It's critical. I mean, in the sense when we're talking about light, it's like learning scales. If you're going to play a piano or something, there's certain fundamental things that are going to change the way that you make pictures. Because most people now with the technology, most people can point a camera at something and make a picture of it. But, you know, I always said that, you know, for me, photographers, it was a lot like listening to, you know, 10 people sing the national anthem at a baseball game or something. And you listen to them and they sing the national anthem and you go, yeah, that's pretty good. I liked it. And then the 11th one sings it and you just get goosebumps. And you say, what was that? What was that they somehow that they had in their voice, you know, in their presentation that was so different than the 10 people before? And that's exactly what happens. What separates us to a great degree in photography is people that have a love for and a sensitivity for light, and they can feel it, they can sense it, and they're able to put that into their images. If you don't love it, if you don't see it and love it and appreciate it, you're not going to consistently make those kind of pictures. Now, you might get lucky. Yeah, you can make a nice picture. But to do it at a high level, you really want to be able to think about using that light. So let me show the next. So we already said before, without light, there's neither life nor photography. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go next. So I want you to think just for a second, consider some of the things that light does. Now, some of you know, Janet probably knows because Janet was in the West and she also gets Rural Light Magazine and worked for them. But I did a story 2 years ago on a woman named Grandma Aggie who talked to water. Before she took a drink of water, she would thank the water and she would bless the water and she would drink the water. Now, when she first said this, I thought, okay, she's a little cuckoo maybe. And then the more time I spent with her, the more I realized she was serious about this. She said, water can hear you, water can understand you, water can react to you, and people don't understand it. She said, my people understand it. You know, again, after spending some time with her, I had a whole different view of even drinking water, even looking at water as a light source. And that's what I want you to think about light. So one of the things that light does is it heals. Okay, next. It illuminates and it reveals. Now, particularly if you were working in those of you that are shooting sports, for instance, I know Mark does, and if it used to be that you'd get in a situation and it would be so dark you felt like you had to wear a coal miner's hat to be able to photograph a basketball game. Having enough light was really important. You wanted something that would illuminate and that would reveal things that you can't see. All right. And then also light can be a guide to us. You can watch, light can direct you to a certain place. You can see where the source of that light's coming from. Keep going. Light controls tides. The two great lights, you have the sun and you have the moon. Both of them do a lot to our world. I don't think we think about that very much with the moon, but the moon controls tides and it also controls moods. Some of you will tell you, I got a cranky mood today. And I'll say, why? Well, because it's a full moon, Well, some people are like that, right? Some people, they're kind of vampire-ish, I guess. All right. Also light has a way of lightening colors. You notice this. I mean, this morning I was up and I was out photographing the fall foliage again. And I'm looking at a hillside and I'm waiting for the light. And it's basically monochromatic. Yeah, it has a little bit of orange in it a little bit, but it's still kind of gray more than it is anything. And whenever the sunlight broke through past a cloud and it hit the edge of that, this little hill I was photographing, it just exploded. It exploded in color. It brightened that color in a second. Okay? So, as we say, it's a metaphor for many things, for many lessons in life. We use that oftentimes. We see the light. I see the light finally, right? Okay. Moving on. So today, this is our get to be our first assignment. I want you to focus on the light source. It's really important. Now, you're going to find that if there are 1,000 pictures posted online, I don't care if you're looking at magazine pictures, that I would say at least 90% of them, maybe 95% of them, people are using the light, but they're not really photographing the light. They're not really photographing the light source. It's a small thing, it's an important thing. I think it's important that you recognize, I remember years ago when I was working out, I was doing a lot of landscape photography, and I would have a preconceived idea. I mean, I would say, okay, I'm going to be in this creek bed or this hillside at 5 o'clock, and the light's going to come up this certain way. And I would plan that. I would keep notes because I knew where I wanted the light to fall. And so I'd get out there before daylight. I'd drive a long ways. I'd be waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden, it's overcast. And I'm thinking, man, what? That's not working out. It's not what I had planned. And I'm sitting there looking at the skyline, and all of a sudden I turn around and go, I look behind me, and I think, oh man, I'm missing something here. Because I really hadn't looked around at the light source. I was just looking at a preconceived idea of an area. So I want you to think about, well, today and Thursday, I want you to focus on the source. Now, I'm going to show you about 8 or 10 pictures that are like this, that the light source is the primary star. That's the way I like to call it. I said that every photograph has a star. You know, sometimes the star is composition, and sometimes it's light, and sometimes it's the moment. But in this case, I want the light to be the star. I want you to look at the picture and think, wow, it was the light that got my attention. So let me show you some examples. So this is a picture. Now, once again, I'll tell you, I always have to put a disclaimer on this. I make a lot of pictures because I want to teach. I think most pictures I make, I'm making them with the idea of teaching somebody something. So I shot this picture 2 days ago. It's not bad. I mean, it's not like a great image, but it's not a bad image. But it's an image that illustrates the point. If I had my back, if I walked into that light, I could use that light differently. But what I'm doing is I'm pointing at the light. I'm pointing at the light source. This is the source of light, and it has a certain feel. You're going to find that some of the most moving pictures that you're ever going to see, particularly out of our country, a lot of Eastern countries, you'll find that they have real strong light sources that are coming through a window or coming through the top of a roof, and they're kind of washing over people. We don't do that very much here. Okay. There's another one. This is, most of you have seen this picture probably 1,000 times. You're not that old yet. But this is what's called Walk in Paradise Garden. It was, W. Eugene Smith. There was some controversy. Some people said, well, he had his kids do this. He made them walk in there. Some people said it was his mother that really topped the picture because he was injured. I don't know. I never asked him. I met Gene Smith, but I never asked him. But I would say this. It's a good example of you really are focused on the light. You're exposing it, you want these little figures to kind of be walking into that light because it has that sort of symbolism of moving into the light of hope and beauty. That's why it's so powerful. There's a picture that I shot just to again show you that I'm pointing at, there's no other light source. I'm just pointing at the light source. The light source is a couple of light poles and stuff, and you can notice there's a guy, a little figure on the left. This is in Rock City up in Chattanooga. Not too far from Andy. He's probably been in Rock.
Actually, right behind my house.
Yeah, really. Well, I used to live right about 2 miles from Rock City.
Yeah.
Yeah. I lived right over the Georgia side. Yeah, well, that's good. So Rock City, even this time of year probably gets fog, and the fog goes in there. And so if you're going to see that, what you're doing is you're looking at the light because it gives you a certain feel, doesn't it? People can say, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to get close and put my flash on. Well, that doesn't work either. Flash doesn't work very well in fog, by the way, because it bounces off it and reflects it. Okay, next picture. Here are 3 images. There are 3 poles. It's all I'm doing is pointing at the light. Obviously these are man-made light sources that are working in conjunction with, God-made light source. So you have the natural, it's getting dark. It's almost dark. It's, you got that blue light, but then you have the warm orange lights that are making it. So this is looking at light sources. This is photographing light sources. Next, another one. It's all about the light sources, although this is a combination because there's a light source behind me that's spilling over into these, I want to call them coffins or or what they call these things here, tombs, I guess. Tomb's the best word, but this is in Israel, looking down in Israel, and it was really wanted to look at Israel, the light of Israel, but there's a little bit of light coming in. So I don't know what that light source is. It's picking up on the tombs as well. So it's a combination of things. Okay. Oh, so this is really obvious, right? Sunsets and sunrises. Here's a sunset because of the fires. The fires make the sky get cloudy and gray. And when the light, the sun comes through that, it's going to take on more of an orange, which probably saves your eyes so you're not looking at them. And by the way, I just remind you, I know you all know this, but I have to tell you this. Don't go out there with a 300mm lens and take a picture of the sun with your bare eyes. I mean, because you can really burn your eyes. You can actually get like arc burns in your eyes if you're looking right into the sun with telephotos and things. So I just sort of do that. It's not bad when you have it diffused by the smoke. It's not too bad. Okay. Here's a moonrise. So we have two light sources. We have a moon rising. We have a sun setting. Both of those are the star of the show is the light. We're not using the light, we're photographing the light. All right, moving next. Here's another. This is a friend of mine named Andy Sharp. He does a really lot of nice landscapes. We've been friends for a while. So I wanted to include that one. He used, I always tell people, if you're going to do that great sunset or sunrise, the foreground is what's going to make it or break it. You want to find a good foreground. Most times people that are working out, when we're out in the country, you start about, an hour before sunset, you start figuring out where can I get the foreground that's going to be able to, to really give that some contrast and depth. Okay. This is a picture I shot in Florence, Italy last November. Once again, the lights, just using the light source, you're pointing at the light. Now, generally speaking, it's going to create silhouettes. Now that's what silhouettes are. Basically, you're photographing the light and you're letting whatever's in the foreground go dark, right? You don't want to have detail on that. This one's a kind of a combination of that. Okay. Going forward, another one pointing at the light, the moonlight, but there's also some light, artificial light coming from other places. Same thing, a combination of light, but you're trying to use the light source behind there, which is the merry-go-round. So a longer exposure, then you get big twirling things. I'll show you in a second. Okay, here's another example. This was actually one of the first cell phone pictures that I shot when I first started using a cell phone. It was an Android. And I just felt like the lights were so important to this picture. Yes, the subject is important. He's very important. And when you look at this overall scene, this is Valentine's Day, and this guy's sitting here, and this is where he and his wife sat for 20 years or something. It was the same spot, and she had just died. And so this was the first Valentine's Day without her. So he still goes back to the restaurant, and he sits in that same spot. And when I saw this, I mean, I made the picture before I knew the story, but it was the two lights. Using those lights as rather than cropping them out, I felt was important. I felt seeing that light was important, and the fact that there were two lights, and it was at one point in his life there were two of him. I mean, it's him and his wife, and so there can be a lot of symbolism in that. Once again, so this is the idea of silhouetting. You're photographing the light, you're exposing for the light, you're letting the foreground go dark. We're going to do some more of those things down the road. I'm going to give you an assignment like that. Okay. Another same example. Long time ago. This is for most of you were born. Maybe not Mark, but the rest of you probably. I think I shot that in 1969 or 70. So I know a lot of you weren't born then. Mark, when were you born?
I was born in 1951.
Wow, we're the same age, 35. Yeah. Andy, when were you born?
83.
Oh my gosh. The old saying, got shoes older than that. You're a young guy. Okay, here's another example. Seeing the light, using the light, photographing the light source, letting somebody go into that source. Shot this in Israel. Same, look at pointing at the light sources. Using one light source, there's probably this overhead light that's lighting that building on the right. Okay, almost done. So the star of the show is the light. Pointing at the light. One, couple more, I think. Oh, so in the, if you want to do this, and maybe you want to, I'd say, I would suggest you might want to play. You can play with the light. This is, all I'm doing is photographing the light, using a long shutter, basically what we call dragging the light, probably a 3 or 4 or 5 second, exposure maybe, and then starting the exposure and then moving, as the shutter is open. So it takes some practice, but this is an example of just photographing the light. There's another one. I think I have a couple like that in there. This is another one I did in Kansas City. If I just shot a picture of the light in the sign, it was boring. So I wanted to be able to add some life to it by just using a slow shutter and dragging it through. This is a picture. Oh my gosh, I wrote down his name and I'm sitting here and I can't think. It was just on there yesterday. Let me see if I have it. Oh, I didn't think I forgot his name.
Benjamin, I can't read his last name.
Are you able to see it? Yeah. I saw this last night. I was looking, some on either it was Facebook or Instagram feed, and I saw this and I thought this is a good example of what we're talking about, photographing the light and using a long shutter. This is why I would say you want a tripod to be able to stabilize that. But that was pretty good. And this is the picture that I really love. This is a picture by Doug Mills. And there's a color version as well. And Doug Mills is, boy, talk about a tremendous photographer, great photographer. And this was when President Trump was coming off Air Force One. But I just, you photographing lightning, which is wonderful. Okay, so you got the idea. Back to your faces again. All right, so does this make sense to you? Do you understand this? Are we with me? Yes, Mark.
Yes, I got it. Yeah, great. And that Doug Mills picture is fantastic.
I'm sorry?
I said the Doug Mills photo is great. That's outstanding.
I love that. Mark, you don't mind me sharing? Mark does a lot of, he's doing star photography as well, which means very long exposure. So what he's doing is exactly what we're talking about. You're photographing the light source itself.
Correct.
Something else. So what you're trying to think about is if you're a golfer, if you just started golfing and you go out there and you're hacking around and you have a driver and you might have a wedge or something, what you're trying to do is you want to add to your bag. You want to add, I won't say tricks, but you want to add techniques to your bag. So what I'm hoping to do with light is how it's done is that you're going to have 5 or 6 or 7 techniques. When you think about an assignment, you're going to think, maybe I need to think about this technique. Maybe I need to think about I want to photograph the light source more than anything. It's kind of a popular thing, I don't really like it, but a lot of people do portraits that way. A young couple, they'll be, it's kind of blown out because they're just photographing them from the back. And that's fine. That's because everybody has their own style to do it. But that's the way. So, okay, so question that you might have. Jen, do you have a question yet? No. That means she's sucked it all up already. She's already absorbed it and she's already smart. Good. How about the guy left? The guy in the middle is me. Lauren, question.
Not yet.
Did you hear anything that you didn't already know?
I think so. Maybe things that kind of made me go, oh yeah. But yeah, at least there were a lot of good reminders, and then a lot of things that I didn't really think about before.
Okay. This is going to be interesting. Like one of the things you do in sports sometimes, early on when I shot a lot of sports, one of the things that I would challenge myself to do was saying, okay, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to photograph the offensive line. Oh, it was so hard. And I did that. I was doing a story on an offensive lineman for the San Francisco 49ers. And it was really difficult because my tendency is I want to follow the ball. I want to follow the quarterback. I want to watch something happen. I want to pick a receiver that's going to go downfield. It's just a natural tendency. It's like a herding dog, telling him not to run, chase sheep or something. It was really hard not to do it, but I had to discipline myself to say, I'm only going to position myself where I'm watching, this offensive lineman. I want to watch what he does. all the time. It was a good exercise. That's what I want you guys to think about. This week, I want you to discipline yourself to say, all I'm going to really focus on, I'm not saying if you don't see a great image that you shouldn't shoot it. Of course you should. But I want you to focus on using the light, photographing into the light source itself, seeing what you're able to come up with. Right? All right. So, question, Mark.
No, I think it makes great sense. And it's a great reminder as well as, you know, the light, there's so many different things you can do with light as a photographer and how you utilize it, whether it's direct or indirect or, you know, whatever, dragging the shutter, all that stuff. I think it's great.
So it's often been said that unless you learn to see the light, you're not going to be able to replicate it. Unless you see different forms of light and how light falls upon each one of us and how it falls upon environments, then I'm not going to be able to turn around and recreate that. Because we can recreate almost all light, right? We can make something look like daylight. We can make it look any way we like. But you want to be able to first see it. You have to, you know, I guarantee you the people that started, you know, Da Vinci spent hours and hours on the side of a cliff watching birds fly, trying to figure out how can I fly like these condors or hawks or whatever else he was watching. And he, you know, he even took a guy and, you know, pushed him off the cliff. He crashed, but he was trying to flap his wings. Well, that happens because of all the time of you know, observing the flight, watching the motion. I cannot say it enough to you about light. So you're observing a particular part. You're putting another club in your bag. When you look at that, looking at light source and photographing into light source, it's like taking a 4-iron and stucking in my bag that I didn't have before, until it becomes sort of second nature that you think about it. Okay, Josie, any questions?
No questions. Just inspired a lot by the pictures.
Just like being in class, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taking notes.
Except I talk faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About the same. A lot of people talk fast on Zoomer now.
Yeah. Well, I get excited. I get talking fast and I start waving my arms, and that's because I care about this. I think about, as I've told you guys, this is like my family. The next 6 weeks, I'm going to be thinking about you, and I get excited about if I can show you something that will help you do what you do better. Janet, questions, observations?
Can you talk a little bit more about metering?
Yes. Okay, so generally speaking, most cameras, you have a choice. And most cameras have what they call a spot meter, which means it's a really small spot that you can point in a particular area, and the camera is going to say, well, I will give you, what the camera is trying to do is give you, you know, basically a grade. You know, it has a percentage that it's going to work on. You know, so that it's not blown out white. So if you put your spot meter, you know, on anything basically, that's the camera saying this is what you want exposed correctly, and that's 18% grade. So if you put it on center weighted, you know, which most cameras have center weighted, what it's telling you is then basically what is in the middle. If you kind of drew a circle in the middle of your frame, basically what is in the middle of your frame, the circle, is what the camera says that, you know, this is what you want exposed correctly. The camera is just responding to you. You're telling the camera, I want what's in the circle of that frame to be exposed properly. And that's what the camera is going to give you a meter reading. And then you can do what's called matrix metering, which means it takes all 4 corners and basically it's averaging them. So highlights might be blown out, shadows might be too dark, I don't know, but it's just trying to give you a nice flat average file. Now, you know, a lot of people don't believe in shooting in RAW, and when I started off, I thought RAW was cheating. It was like when we first started with digital photography, I thought it was like chimping and cheating and RAW. I found that RAW is it takes up a lot of space. It's hard to shoot a lot of fast frames with most cameras unless you got high-end cameras. but it allows you to do a lot of things. It allows you, after the fact, to bring down highlights or open up shadows and do stuff like that. So it's a tool that is there for you. They would probably, if I was teaching a class, some classes, I would tell them they're not allowed to use automatic, they're not allowed to shoot in RAW, that they have to do everything manually because I want them to learn the fundamentals. You all are not in that group. So when you meter, Janet, you have to ask, what is it that I really want? I mean, like I was using you as an example, if you have a highlight, I'm trying to pick somebody here, like, let's just say I pick, I'm looking at, can you see Mark's frame right now? Janet, are you able to see Mark where he's got a kind of a window behind him on one side, and so he,
dark now.
yeah, the primary light source is coming, one side of his face is illuminated more than the other. You see that? Yeah, so half of his face is in shadow. If I expose for the highlight, which is the highlight, the hottest spot of his face, if I make that my exposure, then its face is going to be, the other side is going to be in shadow and even shadow more. But if I was to expose for the shadow side, if I decided I was going to make my exposure for the shadow side of his face, then the highlight side of his face is going to be overexposed. And with digital photography, there's no detail there. You can't put it back. It's not there. There's no data. So that's what we say we usually try to photograph for highlight. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but I will tell you in a situation like that, what you would do generally is you would photograph for highlight, but you might take a reflector of some sort off to the left side just a little bit, just to kind of open up the shadow a little bit to make sure. I still want to keep a differential there. I still want it to still have modeling. But so where all the pictures that you saw, Janet, the silhouette pictures, when you're photographing silhouettes, you are making your exposure for the highlight. You're telling that camera, I want that gray, I want that blue sky to be 18% gray. That's what you're telling the camera. And so that's what it's going to do, which means anything in shadow is going to fall even deeper in shadow. Right?
Right, makes sense.
Somebody else want to translate that into English better? Feel free. Yes. So I would say, metering is, we can talk more about metering even, is that, sometimes you say, well, I don't know, I'm 10 feet away from Mark. How do I know if I don't want to run up to him and put my camera right in his face to meter that? What I would tell you is put your hand in the same light, the same kind of light, and meter your hand. Your hand is like a gray card to begin with. It's close to saying 18% gray. So just make sure that your hand is in the same kind of light as your source, as your subject in front of you, that's far away, and just kind of do a meter reading on your hand and say, okay, that's what I want to do. That's what I want that to look like.
Dave, you're going to talk about white balance too, because white balance has a drastic effect on light.
White balance is okay. Does anybody?
Yeah, like Kelvin. Are you later on? Not now, but later on, you're going to talk about Kelvin, like light.
Would you guys like me to do that? I can be glad to put up a Kelvin scale, which tells you that what the temperature of blue light. I'm going to talk about light temperature a little bit,
Okay.
but that's probably where I'll include that. But basically, candlelight is one temperature. Everything is based on what a term they call Kelvin temperature. So a candlelight has one temperature, blue sky has another temperature, and it's balancing those temperatures. It used to be when we had to use flash a lot, what we would do is we would have to put a gel over our flash because we were trying to match the fluorescent light or something. We put a green gel over, we put an orange gel over, trying to bring our color temperatures to the same temperature. So yeah, that's good. That's a little technical right yet, but I will definitely talk about, I'm going to show you a Kelvin. And if I think about it, since I'm talking, I'll listen to myself. I'll look up see if I can find a good chart, and I'll send that to you meanwhile, so that you can look at that. Because if you're trying to be really fine tuning, I mean, I'm looking down here at the bottom of Andy, and Andy's probably, when you're doing movies, it's probably, it's more critical than for most people using a DSLR and shooting daily work. Color temperatures are really important. It changes it. I mean, you look at, yeah, I'm looking right now, I'm looking at Andy and his face is warm. He's got an incandescent bulb coming from somewhere, or also sunlight coming outside. And I don't think it is. I mean, there's sunlight around him, but it looks like there's an incandescent bulb, which is going to create a warm, on daylight balanced film or a daylight automatic on your digital. It's going to look warm. I look over on the other side when I'm looking at Mark. Mark looks green. He has sort of that, he kind of has that, you know, tomb lighting or something.
Right.
So he has a whole different, there's a different light source, there's a different color temperature, and you can look at each one of you and you can feel a different temperature. You know, when I'm looking at Lauren, I see that she's got a, you know, must be a light coming from one window or something, because you got one kind of a warm light coming from the side. You know, Jen looked like she's, you know, it could be a fluorescent light source, it could be no light source, it could be in shadow, but it's very cold, it's very blue. So everybody looks different. Yeah, and actually when I look at the balance, you know, Janet's is balanced pretty well. Your balance is fairly good, it's a little blue. And then, you know, obviously Andy's is perfectly balanced right now. So, all right. Once again, I've told you guys from the beginning is we have different levels of experience here. And it's really important that you do, just as Janet said, is ask me again. And if I don't make it clear, then we'll come at it at another angle, or somebody else might be able to make it clear. But I want you to, you know, I don't want you to walk away saying, well, I didn't understand that, because we want you to understand that. We want you to feel comfortable with it. And because we have such different levels of experience here, I have to try to find a way to talk both ends. If I can start getting gibberish and to where it becomes real technical real quick. Actually, I'm in the dark now. Oh no, I'm gone. We're gonna lift up a light. I'll show you. Just grab the bottom and just pull it straight up. You'll get more light. A little more. Ah, okay, a little over there now. Now I'm getting some side light on me. It's dark where we are. We could have turned the lights on, but we didn't. The reason I did this is I have a whiteboard and I was all excited. I was going to stand up here and I was going to scribble all over the board like I normally do. And then I just sat down because I wanted to see your faces. So it's going to change. Ah, there we go. It's going to change all the time. Sometimes I'm going to be, you know, I may be writing on the board because that's the way that I can communicate. And sometimes I'll just be sitting here. And sometimes we're always going to be looking at pictures. You know, that's good. Okay. I would say, again, we're going to aim. A big question we had, and this was several people have asked this about the timing. You know, the timing, because 6 o'clock, it might be difficult for some people, 6 p.m. if you're on the East Coast. If you're on the West Coast, that's 3 o'clock. Janet, isn't it 3 o'clock where you were? Yeah. So my question would be, in deference to those that it might be difficult for 6 o'clock, what if we even moved it up a half an hour? If we made it 5:30, would that change your life, Janet? Is that going to make it too hard for you because you're the West?
I don't have a job. It doesn't matter.
How about Lauren? How about you? Well, you're on the East Coast. Is 5:30 different than 6 for you?
No, I'm pretty open.
Okay. Jen, you got some light on you. Yeah. So Jen, how about you? Are you already fixed at 6 o'clock? Is 5:30? Would that be an inconvenience for you to go a half an hour earlier?
I don't think so. Mm-mm.
All right.
Be good. Mm-hmm.
Josie, how about you?
I'm good. I
Yeah.
have class that ends 5:30 though. So
You have a class until 5:30?
yeah, but it usually ends earlier.
Yeah. This will give you an excuse. Okay. So Andy, how about you?
Yeah, 5:30 works for me.
Okay, Mark, does that help you? An extra 30 minutes?
Yeah, but better than 6.
Mark has a lot of sports stuff he has to do, and so I'm just trying to, you know, split the difference here and be able to get something that helps everybody a little bit. So we're going to aim for 5:30 then. Okay, so what I'll do is we will be sending you a link in advance that, you know, it's based upon, it's just going to be my phone number. My phone number is going to be basically the invite link. So once we get that, we'll have that here hopefully by Thursday. So we will send you something in advance, and that way you don't have to, I don't have to call you up each time necessarily. But I don't mind doing it. We're a small group right now. And you may see people popping in that we didn't see tonight. I don't know, depends what their schedule is. Okay, I don't even know what time it is, but I do know that we've got to start. All right, any questions, any parting thoughts, any suggestions?
I have one. Does this is someone work with more double exposure or double exposure on like signs? Because when the picture of the BE drag down the open shutter, that kind of got me thinking about multiple exposure.
Right. What?
And
I didn't understand.
and
Part of
would
it.
that be okay to
Yes.
try? Okay.
Well, absolutely. Yes. I mean, that's, yeah. And let me tell you something else again, folks. I know you know this. You know, when I taught for so long, people would say, Mr. Rubel, you know, I wasn't sure what you wanted. And I would say, what I want you to do is to be creative. I want to see what you see. I know what I see. I don't want you to try, you're not here to try to please me. You're not here to try to outguess what I want. And that has nothing to do with it. My job is I'm a coach. I'm going to try to get you to work your muscles and try to get you to do what you do and to do it better. So you're not trying to please me. I want, be creative, please. And, we're not making fun of anybody. I don't care what you've done. We'll look at it and we can make suggestions. And that's, as all of you know, who've ever been through this kind of a process, the critique process is critical. It's so important to our growth to look at it and say, yeah, I didn't think about it. I didn't think about approaching it that way. I didn't think about doing something there, right? So that's what's going to be helpful is seeing each other's pictures, not just yours. Okay, I feel like I've said what I wanted to say today. At least I got the core of it down. I'm sure there's things that I wanted to say later, but I don't want to be the one talking all the time anyway. I want you to be talking. So if you have a question, email me. Send me an email, say, okay, I didn't understand this, and I will answer you as soon as I can. And that's all I know what to say today. Thursday, though, I'm going to show some more work, and we'll talk more about that.
Great. Thanks, Dave. That was great.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe, and go Dodgers.
See you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.